All right. May I have your attention, please? All right. It's time to get to the business. So let me introduce myself first. My name is Ming Kwok. I am the Associate Director of the School of Public Policy, U of Calgary. I'm pleased to be here on behalf of Martha Hall Finney, the Director of the School of Public Policy, and welcome you to this section on productivity. Martha has obligations in Calgary that keep her from being here so that she cannot be here, but she so have a strong support of the Productivity Summit and the initiative we are referring to now, and is excited about the work of this group will do today. As Canada's entrepreneurial university, U of Calgary is also pleased to be taking part active role in this promotion and important discussions about Canada's future. Like last October, the School of Public Policy, with the support of the Alberta government, we organized the Productivity Summit in Calgary. And this year, 2025, we are going to Six City as a follow-up of the Productivity Summit from last year, because this year we'll try to be more in-depth in each sector and discuss more about the actionable recommendations. The Six Cities include Ottawa, Montreal, Vancouver, Halifax, Toronto, Saskatoon. Ottawa is our first stop, so we'll continue for the rest of the year in 2025. So, at last, thank you again to all of you who come to this section. Before I go, I want to introduce Dr. Trevor, because as I say, last October, we organized the summit in Calgary, and Trevor is going to have a brief overview about what we get from the summit as a starting point for our initiative. Thank you again, and enjoy the section.
Well, thank you, Ming, and thank you to everyone for being here today, and a special thank you also to the Public Policy Forum for partnering with us and making sure this important set of conversations that we'll have today are a great success. Now, Canada's Productivity Initiative and the summit that we hosted in October was really meant to try and help move the needle on a persistent challenge that Canada has faced. And I think now it is even more important than it was then. We're going into 2025 and seeing considerable economic uncertainty. Various researchers have tried to measure this, construct indices of economic uncertainty. You can actually check it out at policyuncertainty.com. Great set of researchers that quantifies that. And for Canada in January 2025, they measure the amount of economic uncertainty in Canada at a level that exceeds the worst point in early 2020. Quite a bit higher than the record-setting level that we had back then. And that itself is a challenge. It will be a drag on investment and therefore a drag on productivity and growth, and is likely to continue as policy uncertainty, trade uncertainty in particular, continues. But the longer-standing challenge that Canada has faced has been a decline in the pace of productivity growth. So since 2015, labor productivity has increased by approximately 0.2% on average per year between then and now. For the 20 years prior to that, however, we grew at an average annual rate of about 1.5% per year. So effectively, we've grown since 2015 in total by an amount similar to what we would have increased by in a typical year for the 20 prior years to 2015. Meanwhile, other countries have increased. The United States has increased more than some, but the gap between the US and Canada has now risen to such an extent that had we just kept pace with the United States since 2015, then the economy today would be roughly 20% larger than it is. the Canadian economy. So this is approximately $640 billion per year in foregone economic activity. Okay, that's a real challenge. It means fewer resources, not just for us as individuals to consume or resources available to businesses to invest, but resources also not available for governments to deliver important public services that we all rely on. So the conversation that we'd like to have throughout 2025 at the various cities that Ming mentioned are deep dives into various policy areas to try and help improve growth, improve productivity, improve investment incentives that ultimately improve living standards and real wages and the purchasing power of our income for individual Canadians. So in October, we did host a large-scale summit on this with approximately 700 people participating, focused on different areas. And on your table, there's a brief summary of kind of what we heard at that summit. It is a very brief summary. There are longer reports available at the School of Public Policy website, policyschool.ca. So check that out if you're intrigued by it. But just skimming the kind of list of topics on that first page of the brochure does reveal a lot of areas where, Canada might think about improving, from infrastructure to climate policy, to international trade, innovation and technology, interprovincial trade, an area receiving a lot of attention today that I think is quite important. But in Ottawa today, we did want to start by kicking off these discussions with tax and competition policy for a couple of reasons. I think first, trade with the US, very important. The economic relationship with the US, very important. And our tax competitiveness relative to the United States does matter. And this year, they are going to be pursuing some fairly large-scale tax reforms in the United States. They did just pass through the House of Representatives their budget bill. Now, there's a lot of details to be worked out. Speaker Johnson said that it is just the kickoff of what will be a four-quarter game. But the kickoff did provide a kind of high-level framework within which those tax cuts will occur in the United States. So it's approximately $4.5 trillion worth of tax cuts over 10 years. And now, that's hard to think about. Numbers, when we're talking about 10 years in the US, always add up to quite a bit. Think about intuitively this being a tax reduction for them that's roughly equivalent to Canada eliminating the GST. That's roughly the scale of the tax reduction that they're contemplating within that budget bill. Okay, details to be determined. Much of that will be continuing the rate reductions that were enacted a few years ago in the Tax Cut and Jobs Act of 2017. So Canada responded then. How should we respond now to material changes in taxation in the United States? And so that's going to be one part of what we talk about today. The second part is competition policy. And this itself connects into many other areas that matter as well. Do we have, again, as the president has noted, high barriers to entry in the financial sector? This is one area that has received attention from the president. But even that aside, competition policy is something that we as Canadians in a smaller market should be thinking more about. It's also tied into issues of international trade and many others. And so we are going to explore that as well today. And it's not just going to be lecture style of our keynote address from Jack Mintz coming up and panel discussions on both tax and competition policy, but you'll also have an opportunity to participate in the conversation, ask questions, raise issues. And given the room, we might be able to do this verbally, but technology might help us a little bit. Now, Ming did note that this is our first productivity initiative event, so we are experimenting with this, but I'm hopeful it'll be a great success. So on your tables, you will see a thing that is standing. I'm not sure what you'd call that, but it has some QR codes on it. One will provide you with a link to more information about the Public Policy Forum, our partner on this event today. Another will focus on a link to, I'm not actually sure, but a third one will provide you with a link to a site that allows you to ask questions. That's one, live Q&A. So look for live Q&A, scan that QR code, and it'll give you the ability to type in questions which the moderator of our panels will be able to see here up on stage. Okay? In the event of an emergency, we do have a microphone, okay, for you.